Namaskar, this is Late Edition. Tonight we'll discuss one of the 6 anti-corruption bills government hopes to get cleared in Parliament. The Public Procurement Bill of 2012. It was introduced in the Lok Sabha in May of 2012. It was sent to the Standing Committee headed by the BJP leader Yashwant Sinha, and the recommendations are being considered before the bill is presented again. Now, some argue that it is perhaps the single most important measure to tackle corruption, since government procurement is between 20 and 30% of GDP and is currently regulated by government rules and guidelines, still giving scope to big-ticket corruption. Well, the bill seeks to regulate procurement by ministries, central government departments, central public sector enterprises, autonomous and statutory bodies, and other procuring entities, and it aims to ensure transparency, accountability and probity in procurement, fair and equitable treatment of bidders, promoting competition, enhancing efficiency and economy, and also safeguarding integrity and enhancing public confidence. Well, the bill draws from the rules, guidelines and model documents, and it also builds on national and international experience. To discuss the subject, let me introduce our very eminent panel representing views of industry, both public and private sectors, as well as the UN Office on Drugs and Crimes and the nodal UN institution for anti-corruption issues, civil society, as well as consumer groups. We have with us Mr. N.N. Mishra, who is the Director of Operations at NTPC, giving us the public sector view. We have Dr. Siddhartha Roy, the Chief Economist at Tata Group, giving us the private sector view. He's joining us from Mumbai. Mr. Pradeep Mehta is the Secretary General of Consumer Unity and Trust Society, CUTS International, representing the consumer groups, joins us from Jaipur. Ms. Bulbul Sen is the former Chief Commissioner of Income Tax and a member of the UN's Office for Drugs, Office on Drugs and Crimes, and the expert. She's a member of the expert group on public procurement and also a co-author of a book on government procurement in India. And Ms. Shabnam Siddiqui is the India head of anti-corruption at Global Compact, the UN network for ethical business. Thanks very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us. We'll start with you, Ms. Sen. You know, we already have an anti-corruption law. We also have institutions like the CAG, we have the CBC, we have the Competition Commission of India. Why do we need another law on public procurement?
Well, basically, I think that is the problem. We have too many guidelines. It's a jungle of rules, but none of these has the force of law. It's for the first time that we have a law bringing together the best practices from national and international fields in the shape of the public procurement bill.
Ms. Siddiqui, are there any obligations that, you know, all countries of the world need to follow, that they all have to have some sort of public procurement act?
With the recently passed UN Convention Against Corruption, it lays down recommendations, some mandatory, some obligatory for different companies. And of all the countries that have ratified the convention, like India, which did ratified it in 2011, there is an obligation to bring in laws in compliance with the ratified treaty, and public procurement and probity in procurement is one of the major things that the convention talks about. So, yeah, it is an important part of the international document.
Dr. Siddhartha Roy, would you say that the public sector has been demanding a law like this? I mean, at least in terms of public bidding, to make it clearer, the definitions clearer, the processes clearer?
You mean the private sector?
The private sector.
Basically, yes, a bill like this, which is being introduced and where we are going to have the legal procedures clearly laid out, will encourage the private sector to bid for these public procurement processes, because now the rules are the ground rules are clear. There is a grievance redressal mechanism. Finally, one thing which we would like to add to it is at this particular point of time, public sector get some preference when it comes to public procurement.
So you're asking for a better, more level playing field?
We would like to see a level playing field.
Sure.
And that may be discussed when the bill is taken up for.
Right. Mr. Mishra, the public sector has been thriving in a monopolistic environment, some would say. But do you feel that this bill would put you at a disadvantage? Because as Dr. Roy says, You know, I mean, you all seem to have had some advantages, they at least perceived advantages in terms of public procurement, and now that seems to be taken away.
Very clear that the public sector welcomes any step which brings in efficiency into the procurement process, which brings in more transparency, which brings in a major change is the grievance redressal mechanism, and overall tries to provide a level playing field. But let me respond to what Dr. Roy had said. It is essential that the government should retain some control as far as providing some protection when procurement for technology is concerned, when to keep the country self-sustained in advanced technology.
Okay.
I think this should have a limited time validity, and after that the level playing field is available for everybody.
Let's bring in Mr. Pradeep Mehta into the discussion. We understand that Cuts International has analyzed this bill in detail and has also given various recommendations. I mean, how much of public procurement is going to help the consumer actually, since you're a consumer group?
As a consumer group, we are concerned with the economic welfare as a whole rather than just directly the issues of consumers. Because consumers are the raison d'etre of all economic activities. Now, in the context of public procurement, we were the first organization in India to have done a very major study, 2 volumes of this, looking at the kind of public procurement system which exists in the country and what is it that is needed. Following the study, we have also submitted our recommendations to the government as well as the Parliamentary Standing Committee on the bill that it has brought forward. Let me also disabuse the notion that there was no public procurement legal framework. The legal framework does exist in the general financial and accounting rules,
right,
except that it is not holistic, nor does it sort of cover all the possible aspects. So what we are doing in India as a specialized public procurement law is not something which has not happened elsewhere in the world. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Sen, you wanted to come in and add to that, or
just wanted to come in on that. I wanted to say that what was there was a collection of rules, did not have the force of law, basically, and basically there were no strict punishments for infringement. Now, with this, there are punishments for a corrupt behavior like bribery. For the first time, both sides of bribery, the bribe taker and the bribe giver, are covered. Secondly, what I wanted to say is anti-competitive behavior. That also is punishable under this act. Cartelization, bid rigging, etc. This is certainly not covered under general financial rules.
Right, but Ms. Sen, you know, I mean, the national manufacturing policy gives preference to domestic companies. Does that in any way, you know, because this policy is supposed to have the overarching law on public procurement and it's supposed to be fair to all companies, both foreign as well as domestic, does that in any way go against it?
I think that's a very good question you have raised. Actually, I find the bill is very balanced on that. The general rule as laid out in section 11(1) of the bill says that the procuring agency cannot discriminate between different categories of bidders. That is the general rule. But there is a place for an exception. If government feels that to promote domestic industry or for any other public interest or socio-economic needs, especially as say the small scale sector is a socio-economically important sector for India, for such reasons government can take exception from the general rule of non-discrimination. From this point of view, the present policy of giving preference to the small scale sector, which has now been enhanced to 20% of procurement by all central agencies, that can remain, that will not be in clashing. The national manufacturing policies stress on domestic value addition in very crucial areas like solar energy or defense production, etc. That would also not clash with this. So the exceptions in the bill are there, though non-discrimination is the general rule.
Right. Dr. Siddhartha Roy, In many countries, public procurement actually favors the domestic market, the domestic manufacturers. Would you feel that, bringing in foreign players and giving them the same sort of rights as domestic players is good for our industry here in India?
Oh, well, in many countries it is there, but a bit theoretically. If you are a signatory to the GPA agreement, then of course you have to offer that kind of facility. But India still has an observer status in GPA.
Right, right.
So I don't think it is obligatory on our part to give all the necessary non-discriminatory options to international competitors. We can look at domestic industry more favorably. So that's where we stand at this point of time, but this needs to be discussed when the bill is taken up.
Ms. Siddiqui, essentially this is an anti-corruption law, and what do you think? Do you think its measures are strong enough to, are they effective enough to control corruption?
Yes, I think it's definitely a good first step in the right direction. This is just the beginning, the bill getting passed. There will be a lot of rules and guidelines which will come following this.
Well, what about the punitive measures?
The punitive measures, especially the grievance redressal mechanisms that are in place through this bill, are really effective because it's for the first time, as Ms. Sen was saying, that both the supply and demand side of corruption is being dealt with in the bill, and that has not happened before. So it's definitely a good first step, but this is not the only bill. There will be other bills that will need to get complemented with this one, as well as the guidelines which will really have an impact on the implementation of the bill.
Mr. Mishra, a jail term of up to 5 years. There's also fines of up to 10%, debarment. Would you say that, this, of course, there are rules now in place. This actually restricts the mental application of a person who's actually doing the procurement officer. What does he need to do? He just needs to follow rules. What's his purpose otherwise?
I would perceive this as a first step to speed up procurement process in public procurement. And once you speed up process, the results, the deliverables are much faster, are much quicker, are much efficient, and are measurable. And as far as the deterrent is concerned, the deterrent will only help in delivering more efficiently and more faster. I would not say that it would be a mental block in taking decisions, in trying to find a solution to a problem.
Right. Mr. Mehta, does the domestic industry need some sort of protection from foreign players, or would you think that, the consumer just benefits because of more and more competition, but we can't just let foreign competition take over?
Not really, but let me go back to the issue of competition as such. We already have the Competition Act
Commission
to
of
deal
India,
with anti-competitive practices in the in public procurement. I'll give you one case. LPG cylinder manufacturers were penalized by the Competition Commission of India for bid rigging and collusion. On the other hand, there is also a national competition policy in the going which talks about competitive neutrality. Now, when you come specifically to the question that you asked me, domestic versus foreign, that would depend upon how far we are able to keep our doors open and to what extent we have obligations. Dr. Roy spoke about the government procurement agreement at the WTO, and we are now perhaps on the way to join it, and if we do join it, then we cannot really practice non-discrimination. Let me give you an example of foreign versus domestic. There is a big debate in India on FDI and retail.
Right.
Now you are already allowing large organized retail chains to come, but then why prevent foreign chains also to come in order to improve the market? And ultimately, any any good, healthy competition helps not only the economy but consumers as well.
Okay, Ms. Sen, what does this bill actually lack? I mean, we're looking towards the future. Are there challenges? What do you think?
Well, I think in the study we did on public procurement, which is right here, we had analyzed one or two major lacuna, and we made recommendations to the government and to the Standing Committee of Parliament on this. This is basically the fact that I find it's a great weakness that the dispute settlement mechanism only has power to make recommendations to the procuring body. Had it mandatory powers, as is the case when we study international legislation on this point, it would have been much stronger. That is one major point. The second major point we find is that green procurement is the buzzword of the day. And in India, we are in danger of really letting the environmental issues go out of hand. So there is a clause there which gives a very good opening that while specifying the criteria, environmental criteria may also be mentioned for the bidder to follow specifications. But had this been made not optional but a mandatory requirement, at least in a limited way for easily doable environmental acts. For example, Brazil has a requirement that at least 50% of its textbooks should be made from recycled paper. At least in some small areas, if it was mandatory, I think it would be good, and I'm looking forward to the rules to touch up these points.
Ms. Siddiqui, what are the international practices with regard to the green shift in sort of procurement?
I think what most countries, especially in the United States and Korea and other places, are doing is that for procurement they are looking at the real the lifetime cost of a contract rather than the immediate financial cost, and that makes the contracts and procurement more energy efficient and long lasting, which is eventually better because procurement is supposed to enhance development and rather than stop it. So the green procurement is definitely not only a buzzword, but it is a necessity with the rapidly global warming that we keep talking about, and we keep making industries liable, and not only for energy efficient industries but for all industries.
Mr. Mishra, NTPC as a public sector organization, what are the systems that you all employ in terms of procurement, and some of the best practices? You could just tell us a little bit about it.
See, in NTPC, when we started way back about 35 years back, when we started our procurement practices for large power plants in the country, we were mainly guided by the World Bank rules of procurement. And it is their fundamental principles on which our procurement documentation was first prepared before we went in for the first procurement. And they, in fact, it is NTPC who did a lot of procurement for World Bank aided projects for other sectors other than power also, because they found that our systems and practices were more equitable, more transparent, and more aligned to international procurement practices also. And we have been continuously improving on this. We have been taking feedback from other international players who do large procurements for, in the country and outside. And till date, we have no major issues as far as efficiency and speed of procurement is concerned.
Dr. Roy, post the award of a contract, do you feel that this bill needs to be a little clearer about procedures of payments? We did talk about dispute settlement, redressal, etc. But do you think that it needs to be more, clear in terms of these areas?
Yes, certainly. In fact, that's very important from the private sector's point of view, because in most of the cases, what happens is that you get the contract, you do the work, and then subsequently your bills remain unpaid for a long period of time.
Right. So you want that to be, you want a time clause to be put in, or what?
If there is something in the bill which prevents that, some kind of a time clause. And the second thing is the context. When you are implementing the bill, the contracting context may change. Suppose you are sort of supplying power to a distribution agency, and suddenly you find that coal which you are supposed to get is not coming to you, then how will you provide the power at the kind of rate at which it has been agreed?
Okay. Right, we'll bring in Mr. Mehta now. We know that Cuts has brought in lots of recommendations for this bill, and many of them have submitted to the Standing Committee. Could you just throw some light on some of the recommendations that you gave to the Standing Committee?
I'll do that, but just before that, let me also inform the panel as well as the audience that we cannot have a Christmas tree as far as the public procurement law is concerned.
And what do you mean by that?
Public policy objectives, we cannot put in everything possible in a particular law.
Okay.
There are different laws for different, there are different policies for different objectives. For example, green procurement. There is already a major initiative by the government to promote green procurement. The public procurement bill basically looks at the integrity of the public procurement system and to deal with the distortions which arise due to various factors, but without ignoring the fact that there are various other laws. Now, when you talk in terms of integrity and corruption, as you said in your opening remarks, that there are 6 anti-corruption bills.
Right.
Now, all these will help the public procurement process to be more effective than what it is today. Today, it is anybody's guess as to how it happens. We also pointed out that about 30% of our GDP is public procurement, and of that, even if you assume that 15% is the leakage or the kind of problem which happens, the amount is staggering. It is humongous. And that itself can add to the economic welfare in a very big way possible. Now, insofar as the bill is concerned, the Code of Integrity is very good.
Okay.
And it is binding on both the procuring authority and the bidders.
Okay.
And so on. And Bulbul Sen has spoken about it at length. And including there is also a safeguard against vexatious and frivolous complaints.
Okay.
But if you make a false complaint, then you are liable for fine rather than that you can get away scot-free.
Right. Okay. We'll take just one comment, a few comments from Dr. Roy. This Integrity Pact, has the private sector, not been keen on it?
The
Code of Integrity, yes.
We have well laid out procedures now on the table. So this Integrity Pact is of great use, and reputed private sectors will like to bid for public sector procurement. So from that point of view, it's a very sort of a welcome step.
Sure. Right, and the final word from you, Mr. Mishra. What do you think this bill is going to just improve the way public sector functions completely?
Definitely is going to improve the whole procurement process in public sector.
Okay.
But one observation I would like to make is that the private sector also does a lot of procurement.
Sure.
We would welcome them to have a look at this bill, and large corporate private houses with good corporate governance should also welcome this public procurement bill.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us on this show, late edition, talking about the Public Procurement Bill of 2012. Well, the Public Procurement Bill, the punishments include imprisonment from 6 months to 5 years, forfeitures and recoveries, debarment from bidding in certain circumstances, and fines up to 10% of the procurement value. There's also an inbuilt safeguards also for protection of action taken in good faith, and punishment up to 5% of the value of procurement for vexatious complaints. Now, currently, the public procurement in the country by the central government follows the General Financial Rules, as was mentioned, of 2005. And this bill is based on recommendations of the Committee on Public Procurement, which was accepted by the GOM, which was headed by the then Finance Minister, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, in 2012. Thanks very much for watching. Namaskar.